marketing or management, we use a lot of his platform. So he is a phenomenal resource, is a great platform, but more importantly, he also is willing to come and talk with us about A, how to use the platform, but B, how to use data to make decisions. And our class is understanding management. And part of management is evaluation and benchmarking. And so Neil's going to spend a little bit of time talking about the platform, talking about a little bit of his background within the sport industry, the data side, how data helps with management, and how you start thinking about how to set up your evaluation metrics to improve your management process. Neil, as always, really appreciate you taking the time and coming to chat with us. You're awesome. Thank you.
Well, Professor Koba, I appreciate the opportunity. I can't say I always appreciate the opportunity to come in at 8 a.m. I think when I was in college, I went to Syracuse, and I did everything humanly possible to avoid anything at 8 o'clock or 8:30. Hey, Professor Kobe, you're kind of right in the middle of the screen. If maybe you could, yeah, there you go, back out. I'd rather see the kids than you. I know what you look like. So, again, I want to thank, Professor Koba for inviting me in here today. I do. Hopefully, at the end of the day, you'll know a little bit more than you did when you started, because I've been in the sports business for almost 25 years. In fact, I've been in research for about 30 years. And don't start trying to calculate how old I might be, because let's just say I'm old, or older than you guys. I'm probably older than a lot of your parents. But I've been in the sports business for over 25 years. Prior to that, I was in cable TV for Comcast, but I have been involved in management, marketing, strategic management, strategic marketing, and marketing research, let's just say for about 25 years. And I'm the president and owner of SRRnet. We're going to talk a little bit, we're going to divide the day up into kind of like maybe 4 sections. We're going to talk a little bit about who I am, what we do, and things like that. I'm going to talk a little bit about how important data is to your process that you're working with Professor Koba on, and what you can do with it, and in some cases what you can't do with it. We're also then going to look at a real life situation that came up actually just this week that I used data with and found it to be incredibly enlightening. And a number of people that saw my social media post on it came back to me and said, that's interesting how you got there. And, we'd like to learn a little bit more about what you did. So there's just a whole lot of things. And then we're going to look at some data itself and understand why I chose the data I chose in order to help me make this strategic, I'm going to call it observation versus anything else. So look, I'm going to ask this morning, I'm going to ask, all of you, to participate. And I'm sorry, I do not know your names. I want to apologize in advance. I will try to call on you. I am not one to wait for somebody to raise their hand. I will just call on someone. If you have the answer, great. If you don't, that's great too. Next person can, they want to blurt it out or something like that. I'm not very formal, as you'll find out. You don't have to call me Mr. Schwartz. That was my dad. You can call me Neil. But again, let's try to have some fun. Let's try to learn something. And hopefully, again, you'll walk out of class today knowing a little bit more than you did when you walked in. Now, 2 things I will say. Number one is that at the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you our social media handles. I really would like it if you would follow us on social media. We're trying to build our audience. I know a lot of you are hoping to get into the sports business at some point in your career or in your careers. I've got a lot of followers in the sports business. It's a great way to be exposed to a lot of different things, a lot of different questions, a lot of different opportunities, and a lot of different things within the sports business. Then the other thing is I want to talk a little bit about, look, how many of you, this is my first audience participation question of the day, how many of you would like to get a job in sports when you are ready to graduate from High Point or when you graduate school? How many of you are interested in the sports business? That's great. I, I, I cannot tell you how much fun I have had over the years in the sports business. Sports are fun, no matter whether you're talking about participation, talking about fandom, talking about sports gambling, talking about streaming, whatever you're talking about, sports are a fun business. And if you can't have fun in the sports business, then I highly recommend you start looking at something else for your future employment. Because I want to make sure that you understand sports are fun. It's not life and death. It's not brain surgery. We're not, it's not boring, financial decisions. I like to call that the dark side, but we can talk about that later. But it's really all about, working with consumers in some cases, working in a business to business environment, but sports are fun. So without further ado, what I'd like to do would be to get started. And hold on, I just lost everything. Boy, sometimes technology is great and sometimes, not so much. Hopefully you can all see my screen, the blue screen. Is anybody, I can't see you at the moment. And why can't I? Oh, I see why. By the way, if you see me look away, it's not I'm looking away from class. I'm looking away. There's something else on my screen that I want to pull over into today's discussion. Professor Koba, are we seeing the PowerPoint up on the screen?
We are.
Great. So Professor Koba asked me to come in and really talk today about data-driven decision-making, data-driven strategic management. And that's what we're going to talk about because, to be honest, it is one of my favorite subjects. So I love to talk about some specific areas in the sports business. But data has a wonderful ability. We're going to talk about that in a minute. That was, of course, that was me in Europe. God, sometimes this just kills me. Why aren't we changing slides here? There we go. So a little bit about SRRnet. We are a leading provider of sports market data for analytics focused on the business of sports. That's what I focus on. I am not focused on anything else. We have an online platform that will offer you and that the school subscribes to that will really help you when you get into some of your projects, will help you when you get into some of your other classes in sports marketing, sports management, sports, you name it. If it's involved in sports, especially on the sports fan side, sports participation side, and even on the equipment side, we are really going to be a one-stop platform in some place where you can go to get data in order to help you, with your projects. As I mentioned, I have over 2 decades of experience of marketing and research experience in the sports, fitness, active lifestyle categories. I love the sports business. It's probably one of the few things that will get me up at 8 o'clock in the morning. That, a plane flight, and going to a live sporting event. But other than that, or maybe my grandchildren. But other than that, nah. I just love the sports business. Don't love getting up that early in the morning. But again, we're going to provide to you just kind of a little bit of an idea about how you use data, a little bit of a roadmap. As I said, we're going to plug in a real life scenario that happened just this week. And hopefully, we'll get it. Just out of curiosity, before I get started on this, how many of you are fans of NFL football? What's the count there, Professor Koba? Is it everybody? Not everybody?
95%.
How many?
95%.
Write that down on your little piece of paper for me. Thanks. So again, the data that we focus on most is our proprietary sports fan data. And we have this incredible resource called Sports Market Analytics, which provides data on 19 separate sports, of which the NFL is one, across 65 categories of data. So we include everything from demographics, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, the how. We have answers to questions that maybe even I haven't even thought of yet. But it's all there somewhere, excuse me, when it comes to sports fans. So it's data that you're really going to love. If you want to work, you're going to want to work and understand college basketball. We've got that, college football. So there's really just so many different categories. But the key thing to remember here is when you decide to get out of school and you go start looking for a job, these categories right here are most likely going to be where you're going to have your best opportunities to get that job. Let's face it, no one comes out of school and gets a job with the New York Yankees or the New York Mets or the Florida Panthers or the Carolina Panthers right out of school. You're going to have to learn and make your bones, in other places, other categories, other areas of the sports business. These are all the categories that you will be, potentially looking at when it comes to getting a job. So my question to you today is, are you data-driven? Because what I have found is that telling a story with data and insights brings things to life. Kind of brings what I would like to call a dead topic to a live topic, strategic and targeted. Quick anecdote, and by the way, I do love data-driven stuff, but I also love a good story now and then. A couple of months ago, a student at NYU, who I will keep nameless, went and interviewed for an intern position with the New York Football Club of the MLS. That's not the big Red Bulls club. That's not the big club. That's the newer, lesser fans. They play, I think, out in Brooklyn or actually in Queens or the Bronx. Smaller club, smaller stadium and all that. So, but they want to compete. They're there to compete. They're there to, they want to draw more fans in. They want more season ticket holders. They want more people to their special events. So this gentleman from NYU went and applied for an internship with them. He sat there with the general manager and they were talking, and the general manager was asking normal questions and all that. And the general manager asked him a question, and rather than just, give the answer, this particular student, what he did was he pulled out a couple of graphs and charts that he ran off of data from SRRnet, from Sports Market Analytics. He showed that data to the general manager. The general manager got up, walked around the desk, sat next to this particular student, and his first question was, David, where did you get this data? And then he asked David, how did you come to these conclusions? Why did you pick this data? Well, the upshot of the story was, number one, they offered David a job, not just an internship, right off of that interview, and they have subsequently bought my data to use as a source to help them with this data and their decision-making process. So remember, data, strategic, targeted, and will help you get a job, will help differentiate you from the kids sitting right next to you or other people from other schools. Because you know what? There's about 550 to 600 schools that currently are teaching some form of sports management, sports business, sports data analytics, sports marketing. A lot of competition out there for these jobs. Why is there so much competition? Sports are fun, guys. So just to real quickly, when you access SRRnet, Sports Market Analytics, you will access it through your library website. It is set up with a direct link. All you've got to do is type in Sports Market Analytics or SRRnet, and up will come the link. You do not need to subscribe. School did that for you. All you need to do is click into the site, which I'm going to show you a little bit later in the presentation, and then you will be able to start working and accessing data. So the school bought the data for you. And not only did they buy the data, they bought upgraded data to really be able to give you access to a lot of fun things and a lot of tools that you will need in order to answer questions. But the reason why I'm so big on this data-driven approach is it has the ability to inspire. It has the ability to convince. It has the ability to persuade. It just has so many abilities if used properly. There's probably no better tool than you can put into your personal tool bag for your job than understanding and knowing how to use data. But let me tell you, you don't have to be a data scientist. I am not. You don't have to be an expert in any of the more complicated, let's say, data analytics programs. I am not. I do, however, know how to use Excel pretty well. That you should learn how to do. Also, what I'm finding is ChatGPT or some of these AI tools can, in fact, be very helpful because they can help you understand, what are some of the issues? What are some of the factors? What are some of the things that are, within that topic that you're trying to focus on? But let me tell you, data, AI is no substitute for you. Just remember that. AI is no substitute for you. Your ability to make a decision, your ability to inspire, your ability to persuade, your ability to convince. That's what's going to make the difference in so many situations. It allows you to focus on what's important. What's important with what are we looking at? It allows you to see the market and a bigger picture. I always consider myself a bigger picture guy. In fact, I had a boss that used to look at me all the time whenever he was looking for a kind of a different look on things. I like to look at a bigger picture if possible. It lets you focus on changing market conditions. And you know what? These markets are changing all the time. The pandemic of 2020 changed everything. Baseball was on a negative trend when it came to fans. But in 2020, when they went hard to streaming, it really changed the trajectory for Major League Baseball. So it can really do a lot of things. But what data can help you do is create, plan, confirm, refute, present. Data is an amazing tool. I'm a golfer. They allow you to have 14 clubs in your golf bag when you play golf, if you're playing in a tournament or an event. I can tell you each one of those clubs do something different. Well, data does every way you use data, every aspect of data will allow you to do something different. So, by using data, what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to get to a win. And when I say a win, I'm not talking about necessarily on the field, 3-2, 4-2, 24-16. I'm talking about a win in a business and marketing sense. If you're trying to sell more tickets and put more butts in seats, what's a win look like? Anybody want to take a shot? Young lady in front with the dark sweatshirt on? What's a win look like?
Well, I feel like it can be different for every organization and plan, but I'm assuming you want to fill every single seat and get all different people in the arena or wherever.
What's your first name?
Brooke.
Brooke, the answer is correct, but it's a lot less complicated than what you said. If I average 1,000 people in my stadium, now that's a small number, and I do a marketing campaign and I put 1,100 people in my stadium, would you consider that to be a success? Or is that winning? Brooke?
Can you repeat that one more time?
From 1,000.
So if I, good, I'm sorry. You want to do it, Professor? Go ahead.
From 1,000 people in the stadium before a marketing campaign to 1,100 after the marketing campaign. Win?
I would say so.
Win. Because why? Because you can't monitor what you can't measure. And what you can measure are butts in seats, tickets sold. If I've been selling 1,000 tickets and all of a sudden I do a marketing campaign and my number goes to 1,100, that's a win, folks. And that's the way you understand winning. Sponsorship deal. Let's say, for instance, I have a sponsorship deal with, I don't know, let's say McDonald's. And you look at to go to a stadium live, and they have a McDonald's poster in center field, baseball stadium, or they've got McDonald's things going on, and all of a sudden you say, look, you know what? I think we could do really well also with Chipotle. By the way, they are growing. So again, we start giving out coupons for Chipotle stores to our fans. I speak with my contact at Chipotle and I ask them the same question. Hey, how many people redeemed their coupons over the last, let's say, 30 days? Again, monitor. You can only monitor what you can measure. You can't measure it, you can't monitor it. Somebody taught me that really early on in my career. It's important to understand what KPIs matter. Let's see, who knows what a KPI stands for? There's a gentleman in a hat in the second row behind, I forgot your name already.
Behind Brooke.
Behind Brooke, thank you. Is that? I saw you for a second now. There you go. Do you know what KPI stands for?
I do not.
Okay. It stands for Key Performance Indicators. Let me tell you, when you're out looking for a job, there is no better buzzword to use than KPI. Mr. Smith, what are some of the KPIs you use to measure success or measure winning? KPI, Key Performance Indicators. It's always important to make sure that you establish a KPI or a Key Performance Indicator. In television, everybody familiar with the Nielsen ratings? How many people are watching a particular show or event? Well, the Nielsen ratings are a KPI, the ratings. So if sport averages, let's say, a 10 rating, and then it jumps to a 15 rating, well, they then had a 50% increase in their measurable KPI. So it's always important to understand what KPIs are important because you have to know what you're shooting for. And when you talk to your boss, when you create a campaign, when you create a program, Mr. Smith, what are the important KPIs you want me to use in order to measure success? Unfortunately, KPIs can also be used to measure failure, but again, they are key performance indicators. One of the things I like to do also is to benchmark. Here's why. Now, a number of years ago, I'm going back to an anecdote here, I sat with the CEO of a major sporting goods company. You would know the name if I said it. They were a manufacturer of equipment for team sports, baseball, basketball, hockey, volleyball, lacrosse, a bunch of other sports. And, I said to them, how are you guys doing? And they said to me, well, our sales are up 5% so far year over year. I said, that's great that you're up 5%, but the market's up 10%. Is that good news or bad news that they are behind the benchmark? Anybody want to take a shot? Anybody? I'm going back to you, Brooke. Sorry.
Bad news.
Is that good news or bad news? The market's at 10, companies at 5, they're still ahead. Is that good news or bad news?
I would say bad, even though
I would too. Because the benchmark is 10 and they're lagging behind the benchmark. So they are not growing, let's say, as fast as their competition. So, Brooke, you are absolutely right on this. The next thing I like to talk about when it comes to strategic marketing is the golden rule of communications. Now, look, a lot of us have learned about the famous golden rule, do unto others, and you would have them do unto you. I think I got that right. But the golden rule of communications says really that people want to be communicated in the way they want to be communicated to. So the things that are important to me might be different than the things that are important to Professor Koba or you, Brooke, or the gentleman sitting behind Brooke. or the young lady sitting behind Brooke to her left with the kind of the teal long sleeve shirt on. So again, understanding what's important to the receiver of the communications. Because they, in our last example, the 5 and 10, big market's up 10, we're up 5. Well, guess what? The receiver of the communications might say, you know what, last year we were down 5. Market may be up 10. We were down 5 last year. We're up 5 this year. We've made a turnaround. So again, help asking questions, understanding what's important to the receiver. Communications always involve at least 2 people. A sender, in this case, this sender is me. Receiver, in this case, the receiver's you. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to go and do a specific example. Can you all take out a piece of paper or something that you can write with? And I'm going to need you to maybe write a couple things down as we're going along here. I asked the initial question, how many of you are fans of the NFL, Professor Koba? We got 95%, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So last week, the NFL made an interesting decision together with Peacock, the streaming network. How many of you are aware of the decision that what the NFL did last week with Peacock? Please raise your hands. Professor Koba, what number do we have there? What percent?
60%.
Okay, write that down for me. So last week, the NFL did something interesting. They took the Kansas City Chiefs and Miami Dolphins playoff game and put it on Peacock exclusively. Let me tell you, a lot of NFL fans went completely bat crap crazy, including this one, I might add, because they made a decision. Now, they made a strategic decision, the NFL and Peacock, that they were going to do this. The NFL paid Peacock $110 million for the right to broadcast this one football game. Write that down, $110 million on your piece of paper, because we're going to come back to it shortly. So they paid $110 million. Okay, here's my next question. How many of you watched the game on Saturday night, the Miami Dolphins against the Kansas City Chiefs? What's that percent, Professor Koba?
25%.
Write it down. How many of you are Taylor Swift fans? I see. How many? What do we have?
5%.
Write it down. Okay, so what do we know? Well, we know, first of all, that Peacock spent $110 million for the game. We know that they have never done this before, done a game exclusively via streaming network. So my question that I would throw out to everybody, by the way, I'm going to come back to the Taylor Swift situation shortly. So my question to everybody is, how many of you, just by knowing what you know or don't know, how many of you, by the way, subscribe to Peacock? Do any of you have Peacock either here or at home? Your parents subscribe to it? I mean, I subscribe to it. How many of you have it? Professor Koba, what's that number?
20%.
Write it down. So we've got a bunch of numbers. We've got a bunch of like what I would call benchmarks, foundational numbers. But let's now move on a little bit. Remember, you can't monitor what you can't measure, what KPIs are important, and then you got to benchmark. So here's what we did. What I took a look at were, on the screen is a chart of the top streaming services among fans of the National Football League. Year over year, every year I ask a question in our annual study of sports fans. How many of you that are NFL fans are also subscribers to these particular streaming networks. As you can see, Amazon Prime, the line, the bar in red is 2022, last year. 2021 is in blue. And then the green line that you see, or the green bar, represents the trend of year-over-year change. And if you look on the right-hand axis, that tells you what that equals. So the bars are measured off the left-hand axis. The green line is measured off the right-hand axis. So what do we see? We first see that Prime has gone up from 2021 to 2022 from just over 25 million fans, NFL fans, to close to 40 million fans. Does anybody know what drove that, or what might have driven that? What decision did Amazon make? Oh, gentlemen with their hand up. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Thursday Night Football.
Bingo, got it. Amazon made a decision to pay $2 billion for 2 years to put on Thursday night NFL football. I have to tell you, a lot of people thought they were absolutely out of their minds. Looking at that number from 21 to 22, does anybody think that they are out of their minds now? I don't, that's for sure. They went up substantially. Now the trend has kind of fallen off a little bit, but they went up substantially. Now the interesting thing about Amazon, they've got what I call the X factor. How many of you are Amazon Prime customers, or again, you're using your parents' Amazon Prime account? Write that down, Professor Koba. What's the percent?
About 90.
Okay, me too. So what did Amazon know before they went into these negotiations? Well, they knew they had 26 million NFL fans in the bag. They knew it. What else is Amazon knows almost to the dollar how much each one of you spends on Amazon if you're a Prime customer per year. Me, I'm probably about 100% or over that number, because it seems like there's packages on my doorstep every morning or every day from Amazon. But they know to the dollar what you spend, not just on, not just on things, but on what you spend via Amazon Prime. So they have that number also, and they have a number of what they would be able to generate through ad revenue. Netflix. You know what? Netflix started out in 2021 pretty popular among NFL fans. Now they went up. They did not go up as much as Amazon. Hulu's up, Disney's up, Peacock is up, ESPN is up. So, my first observation is, look, streaming is up among NFL fans. If I'm Peacock, or I'm going to be the guy from Peacock that came to them with this idea and had to make a presentation to the parent company, Comcast, who, by the way, I used to work for, I might have started with this graph to show specifically Peacock. Yeah, they've only got around, let's say 12 million subscribers in 2021. They were able to almost double it up to 20 million. But look at how much they've been able to increase year over year. Their year over year numbers are terrific. So they're up 60% year over year. Just remember that number, ESPN Plus, everybody. So they're up a lot year over year. Write that number down. Actually, they're up, I'm sorry. They're up closer to 70%. Write that number down. You too, Professor Koba. We're accumulating KPIs, key performance indicators. We're writing them down. We're accumulating the benchmarks. We're going to do that right now. So now let's look at something here real quickly. Kansas City Chiefs fans and Miami Dolphin fans. Again, these are Peacock subscribers year over year for the Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins. This is why they picked the game they picked. This is why they picked the Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins on Saturday night. And it was a short week for the Miami Dolphins because they played on Sunday and then had to turn around again and play on the following Saturday. Not an easy thing to do. Who else knows why that game on Saturday night was kind of unique and difficult? Anybody watch the game, know what went on during that game? This, by the way, does not need to be written down. Anybody know? They played that game in the coldest temperature ever played at a game in Arrowhead Stadium, or whatever they call it now, Geha Field or whatever it is. It was 7 degrees with a wind chill factor of negative 24. Have any of you ever been in negative 24 wind chill factor at all? Gone skiing, been in a blizzard, been, from Chicago. I went to school in Syracuse. And it was mighty cold up there during the winter. The coldest it ever got to that I can remember was minus 16 wind chill. Well, imagine minus 24. And imagine being captive or standing or sitting in a stadium while you're watching a game in minus 24. It was cold. But what do we know? We do know that the Kansas City Chiefs fans started out in 2021 around 200,000. By the way, all the numbers in SRRnet are in thousands. So they started out at 200,000. They went up to about 75,000. Miami Dolphins fans, look at those guys. They started out under 50,000. So let's say 49,000 and now have close to 200,000 Peacock fans. They knew exactly what they were doing when they picked this game. They knew exactly because they looked at the data. How do I know they looked at the data? Because I know somebody who I gave it to for free. My bad. They looked at the data. They knew that these two teams, especially the Dolphins, had a huge growth opportunity because the trend was increasing. So now we put our story together. How am I doing on time? Ooh. Professor Koba, I said 45 minutes. What happens if I go a little over? Do I get the big hook?
Good. You're fine.
Okay. So here's my question that I asked. Will Peacock's investment in one NFL playoff game pay off for them? Let's take a look at what I did. Peacock paid a reported, and it was $110 million for the rights to one NFL playoff game. Seems like a lot of money to me. The average Peacock subscriber pays $60 per year for access. Write that number down. By the way, I can send I'm recording this, so I can send you the link if you'd like to kind of go through again what Neil did here. So the average Peacock subscriber pays $60 per year for access. So based on subscription revenue alone, Peacock would have to generate an additional 1.83 million new subscribers to break even. What did I just say? I'm going back to you, Brooke. Sorry. What did I just say?
Based on subscription revenue alone, Peacock would have to generate.
Based on 1.3 million new subscribers, what is that? What would you call that? That would be my benchmark. Remember, go back here. We know that Peacock has approximately 20 million subscribers among NFL fans. At the end of this experiment, I want them to have 21,830,000. I've now set the benchmark. Write it down. But I also found out something else. And by the way, this next number I got from ChatGPT. I'm one of the idiots that actually pays for the higher level service. With an estimated $50 million in ad revenue that they would achieve from this game, I have what I call a new adjusted benchmark of 1 million new subscribers. So Peacock was able to reduce their benchmark from 1.83 million to 1 million new subscribers just to break even. So at the end of this thing, Peacock has 20 million. Excuse me. So at the end of this thing, they have 21 million. Simple, right? Benchmark, KPI. We're putting this story together. So what else did we know? Well, we knew, oh man, excuse me. We knew from back here that when Amazon Prime added Thursday Night Football, they got an almost 50% lift in subscribers. Now, I'm not saying that what Peacock did is the equivalent of what Amazon was able to do. But again, this shows me, and this will show the decision makers, that the potential is there. My observation, based on all that I looked at, and we're going to look at some numbers in a minute, that it seemed very obtainable based on the NFL's previous streaming efforts, that Peacock would be able to generate at least 1 million new subscribers. That's the benchmark. The KPI is subscribers. How many subscribers would I have at the end of, let's say, the week, the month, the day, whatever they want to use as a measure? Now, interestingly enough, they had over 23 million people tune in to the game. We already know 20 million were probably subscribers already to Peacock. So they potentially added 3 million new subscribers. Even if they only hold on to, let's say, half of them, they will have exceeded the potential, the benchmark, by 500,000 subscribers, or 50% higher than just they needed to break even. I'm going to call on somebody else. There's a young lady on the far right hand, my far right, in a white sweater. If they generated an additional 1.5 million subscribers as a result of this, would you consider that a successful campaign or a successful event? I would too. I would too. And it's why I said, and I predicted, that while it was going to piss off, and it did, a lot of NFL fans, including this one, it was very obtainable based on the NFL's previous streaming efforts. Even though it's a little bit of oranges and apples. And you know what? Sometimes it is oranges and apples. Sometimes it's not exactly the same. But you got to tell a story. And the story I would have told was, here's what happened when Amazon added Thursday Night Football. Now, granted, we're only adding one game. So our story's not going to be as big, but the potential is there. And then I talked about the X factor. They knew in the middle of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, that Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce's girlfriend, was in fact going to be in attendance at the game. So the most popular woman probably in the world right now, Taylor Swift, was going to bring along her, I've heard, she has like 110, she has some ridiculous number of fans in the United States alone. She brought those fans with her. So there were so many positive aspects to whether or not they would be able to be successful. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to change screens real quickly. Yes, I see a hand.
How are the numbers changed? Like it says $60 per year. So I'm guessing that's how you get your million new subscribers. But
It
like,
is.
what about like fans like us who only paid for a month where it's like $6-7 and it's a one-time payment and then it's over with the numbers? How does that change the million new subscribers to break even?
That is an interesting question. So Peacock knows probably already what they call as their churn rate. Churn rate is also a funny industry word for attrition. So I know, for instance, that, and I'm going to use some, what's your first name?
Aiden.
Aiden. I'm going to use some small numbers just to make this really easy. Easy for me too, by the way. So I know if 1,000 people do my 7-day trial of Peacock, that I, with any given success, might only hold on to, I don't know, 10%. So 90% churns out, but 10% stay on. And by the way, that is a completely bogus number, because I know from previous experience that around 60% actually stay on for at least 3 months. I used to work for Comcast. I'm doing this from experience. So I have a little bit of a insight that maybe others do not. But let's just say they have a churn rate of 90% and they retain 10. So what we did was, remember what we said. Okay, they had 20 million subscribers before the day started. They had 23 million people watch the game. Potentially those are 300,000. No, I'm getting this right. 3 million more subscribers if they only hold on to 10%. How many more subscribers will they have gained? And that's really, where they combine their numbers with what they think they can add. And again, it would have been a success for them. And remember, they're not just basing it solely on subscriber, but that's what we had to work with, subscriber data. Did that answer make sense?
Yeah, so I guess I was just curious on like, it's showing like the benchmark $60 per year for the access. But
Yes.
like some fans may only pay for 1 month, which is like $6.
Right.
So you need to get then more subscribers than the 1 million to break even. If you have some of your fans, I don't know what it would be if it's 5%, 3% of your users are not paying for the full year, they're only paying for 1 month.
Right. Well, they got 3 million.
Yeah,
they theoretically generated 3 million. So, based on, them probably being able to hold on to 50% of them for at least 3 months, they will have done better than break even on this. This experiment would have been a success. I mean, I use 10% just because it's easier for me to calculate 10%, but the number is closer to 60% that they would retain for at least 90 days. So again, they use a combination of, data like I have, second party data, plus their first party data that they have to be able to build a story. But you're right. A lot of people did cancel. In fact, my wife asked me last night, she said, dude, did you cancel Peacock? And of course I didn't. So, and yes, my wife did call me dude. So now what I'm going to do is do this. I'm going to bring up the SRRnet site and I'm going to reduce my PowerPoint for a second. So this is the site where all of the data that we looked at came from. Again, you have free access to the data via the library. Professor Koba, it looks like I'm going to go all the way to 9 o'clock. Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right. I after that, my batteries will run out. So this is where you're going to get the data. The data that I used, by the way, came from here, the premium section, which I will add you, our subscribers to. And then the data that I used came from this very first selection of fan studies. And here is what that data looked like. Of course, I can find it. Let's see here. NFL. Thank you. Is that data up on the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So here's where I started with my data. Remember that magic number I said, Peacock had 20 million. Well, I didn't make it up. Here's where it comes from. Right there. But here, so I went to the premium section. I went to our data let me show you a couple things real quickly. All of the data starts off with the methodology. I'm going to share with you one thing. If you ever do a presentation in front of me in any of your classes with Professor Koba later on, and believe me, it's probably going to happen because Professor Koba and I have a great relationship. I get very involved. But if I ever ask you in the middle of your presentation, hey, where does this data come from? And you can't answer, I will immediately mark you down by 1 grade. It's very important that you understand and are able to answer the question, where does the data come from? It's right here in the methodology, okay? Consumer study was conducted, in this case in January of 2023. The new one, by the way, is being done right now, of U.S. consumers ages 13 and older. We got a total of 6,330 respondents, and here's, and then this is the results of that survey. Here's the table of contents. These are all of the categories. Remember I said there were 65 categories? Here they are. I lied, 62 categories. So here they are. But here's where I went to. Streaming services subscribed to. So I knew already what NFL fans said they subscribed to. So that's where I got my original data. I then went backwards and looked at 2021, same chart, same data, same sort of question to find out what they grew from and what they grew to. So again, they went from, whatever I said they were, up to 20 million. Remember, all of my whole numbers in SRRnet are in thousands, so you just lop 3 zeros onto the end. So that's not 20,097, that's 20,000,097. And then we can see that, ESPN Plus and Paramount, and literally this is a very exhaustive list. So I was able to get at, what people did. I also asked a question, by the way, of streaming services added. Remember I had that growth chart? That's where that number came from. So I was able to look at what they currently had and what they added. So again, I chose the numbers that I wanted to use. I put the numbers together, I put everything, I copied what I needed into an Excel spreadsheet, and then just made those charts and graphs that I showed you earlier, all were literally done in Excel by me. I want to say I did them all in about half an hour. I know, here, let me put this back up for a second. So all the data, everything you see here was generated from my annual SRRnet study of sports fans, data driven. So when I walked in and tell my boss and the CEO of Comcast and everybody, I want to spend 110 million of your hard-earned dollars, and I want to bring one NFL playoff game to Peacock. I want to make sure that when I come in with that idea, that I have the data, because I want to be able to create, to plan, to confirm, refute, present. And how do I do that? I measure and I benchmark and I create a KPI. In this case, the KPI is easy because it's subscribers. Are there any questions about any of the things that I've talked about, or any questions in general that you might want to ask me? And please feel free. I'm a pretty open book, as Professor Koba, can tell you. Also, I'd like you all, if you could, to please follow us on social media. LinkedIn, it's just if you type in SRRnet into the search, will come up. Instagram is at SRRnet Data, and Twitter is it's a weird one. It's at RNSB. But again, if you type in SRRnet, it'll come up. So I want to thank again Professor Koba for inviting me in today. Again, I encourage all of you to please, I feel like I'm begging, to please follow us on social media. If you have any questions, my email is up there. If you don't write it down, that's your loss, not mine. I do respond to questions, and I do have, hopefully I can help. Also, you can always talk to Professor Koba. He and I have a great relationship. And I'm going to ask one more time, any questions? How many of you still want to go into the sports business for your future jobs? Are you all, are you more convinced or less convinced, just out of curiosity? Raise your hand if you want to go back into sports, if you're really thinking about the sports business as your future for your careers. Are we still at the same number, Professor Koba, or did I lose some
More or
people?
less. We got a few more people on their phones, hopefully following you.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank Professor Koba for inviting me in today. I really, I will say I really did enjoy this. I do enjoy these opportunity very much to speak with students. And again, I want to thank everyone. Hang on for a second. I tried to do something and it basically didn't work. I want to thank everyone for being a part of today's class. Again, last opportunity for any questions. Yes, sir.
If you were in our shoes right now, what would you do like differently compared to what you did?
What is that? You might have to explain that question to me a little bit more.
Okay. So like if you were sitting like in our seat right now, knowing kind of what you've already done to get where you are like at the moment, what would you do differently?
That is an interesting question. I'll tell you what I would do.
Okay.
I would look at those categories in SRRnet that right now are growing. And what are they? Gambling, growing. Sports tourism, growing. Merchandise sales, kind of flat. Ticket sales, in some cases growing, in some cases not. I would really look at those categories that show that right now that they are growing in one form or another. And I would look at those categories. I'm going to give you a little hint here. The sports tourism business or sports travel business is a great place to get a start. Because one, they're always looking for young people that know how to use data, because the sports touring business is always looking to bring in new potential events, new customers, new sponsors. It's a great place to learn. Every city in America almost has what they call a Convention and Visitors Bureau, and many of them have what they call a sports commission. Those are a group of people that are specifically charged with bringing sporting events in to that city. It's a great place. I know for a fact High Point has a sports commission. You know what? If you're looking for an internship, reach out to the High Point Sports Commission. I don't know who's in charge, but you can easily look it up, online.
I do.
Sports gambling is a great place to start also. You may not be, you may not love sports gambling, you may not be a fan of it, but it is growing rather rapidly. And there are a lot of opportunities. Any more questions? So I'm going to stop the recording.